Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes, but feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in just 1 second. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Kirsten McNally, pronouns she, her. I'm an educator at Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, and welcome to our conversation, Design Career Fair Portfolio Review. This conversation is part of National Design Month, which honors innovation, impact, and recognizes the power of design to change the world. Thank you to our leadership sponsors, Facebook, Shelby and Frederick Gans, Helen and Edward Hintz, the Hirsch Family Foundation, IBM, Crystal and Chris Saka for making National Design Month possible, and to Adobe for supporting the Design Career Fair series. Before we just get started, just a quick access check. We'll be using closed captioning for this program, so you can access that by hitting the CC button on your Zoom toolbar. We'll be together for about an hour and a half until 7 p.m. Eastern, but take breaks when you need, get comfortable, and also know that we'll be recording this so you can always return to it later. We really want this to be a resource for all of you. So if you're interested in developing a design portfolio and are unsure where to start, you are in the right place. Or if you'd like to see examples of great student work from peers, you're also in the right place. Tonight we'll be taking a sneak peek at 4 amazing design portfolios from 2 high school students, 1 college student, and 1 graduate student with reviews from National Design Award winners. So in other words, experts in the field. Building a portfolio is such an important and personal process, and we hope that throughout these reviews, you find inspiration and insight for your own portfolio. Along the way, we'd also love for you to share your support and feedback with one another in the chat. So when sharing any feedback in the chat, remember what you share should be constructive and supportive. I find this little format to be incredibly helpful. So it says, I like, I wish, I wonder. So when sharing feedback, feel free to share something you like, maybe something you wish to have learned or have seen, or maybe something you wonder about what you're seeing. We'll end this session with about a 10-minute Q&A at the end, so feel free if you have questions, be it about something you saw or heard, or maybe about building your own portfolio, put that in the Q&A box, and we will get to that at the end of our program. So before we get started, you might be interested in getting to know our amazing reviewers. So I'm going to turn it over to them to tell us who they are, as well as give us their top portfolio tip. So I'm going to hand it over now to Becca McCarran-Tran, our 2021 National Design Award winner in fashion design.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm the founder and creative director of Chromat, and I'm calling you today from Brooklyn, New York. Very excited to see all this amazing work. I guess I could tell you a quick snippet about Chromat. I studied architecture, and Chromat evolved as a way to build structural experiments on the human body. I love architecture, and I still am very interested in spatial design, but what I love about fashion is the rapid pace. You can design and build an idea in a few hours versus buildings which take years to come to fruition. So I really love the fast pace of this design process. And as you can see, the kind of scaffolding and structures are still very prevalent in this scale as well. So anyway, looking forward to seeing everyone's work. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Becca. We'll also hear from Tosh Kodama of Imaginary Forces.
Hello. Hi, I'm Tosh Kodama. I'm a creative director at Imaginary Forces. Imaginary Forces, we're known for our main title design. We do a lot more than that, but the world knows us through some really great main titles. You might know some of them, like Mad Men, and then even logo animations like Netflix and Marvel. And then just recently, if you watch Apple Plus, we have a few titles that we've done, like Lisi's Story, Foundation, and then just released Invasion. So that's the type of work that we do, and that you've probably seen sort of, like viewing your favorite shows. But one of what's great about these reviews is like the way I am in contact with students is usually through internships. Like we review a lot of intern portfolios, and that's where I get in contact with students. And every year we hire, or actually 3 times a year, maybe 3-4 interns per semester. So we're constantly looking at portfolios. And I mean, the obvious thing is, you obviously show your best work, but you also have to edit it down. Make sure you only show the best work, right? Because you don't want to be brought down by your least impactful work. And then the other thing is, people think it's all about the work, but especially when we hire interns, it's about their personality too. So people forget, like, the about page, that the writing in the about page says a lot about you. So like you have to be just as creative in that section too. So you can't just say list of all the things you've done and awards you've won, but it's like, be creative with your voice, right? So just be in touch with that and understand that it's the whole package and not just the design, but we hire, the person too. So don't get too lost in the work.
Thanks, Tosh. That's always something that's worth remembering, right? And then we have Doris Sung, who is the winner of our Climate Action Award.
So I'm Doris Sung. I am in Los Angeles. I wear several hats. One of them is for this project you see here, which is a smart window system that automatically shades when the sun hits the pieces, and they're very smart in themselves. That's through a company called TBM Designs, which is a startup company that was a takeoff from my research company called Dosu Studio Architecture, where I'm the founder. In addition to that, I actually am the director of the undergraduate programs in the School of Architecture at the University of Southern California. So I do look at many portfolios every year. This past year probably went through about 600 portfolios because I do admissions for both the undergrad and the graduate schools. So I've been doing that for many years. My word of advice for people submitting portfolios to architecture schools, don't feel compelled that it has to be architectural work that you have to show whatsoever, but do make sure that whatever you present is extremely clean and well presented. You do not have to gang a lot of information on a single slide. It's almost better that you present your work on individual slides. So that would be my word of advice.
Thank you, Doris. Certainly plenty of experience, 10,000 hours perhaps. And we have Mia Lair also joining us. Mia may not be able to join us until the end, but we'll be reviewing a student portfolio in landscape architecture. And Mia is the president of Studio MLA and will be joining us later on. Studio MLA is the recipient of the Landscape Architecture Award this year for the National Design Awards. And for those of you who might not know what landscape architecture is, it has to do with the planning and design of both the built environment and the natural world around us, as you can see in a lot of these amazing examples. But we will also hear from a landscape architecture student and learn a little bit more about that later on in the review. So thank you all so much. Are we ready to get started with our review? I'll take it as a yes. So I'm so excited to hand it over to Doran Kim. Doran is a student at University of Texas at Austin, studying textiles and fashion design. And Doran's work will be reviewed by Becca McCarran-Tran. So over to you, Doran, and I will give you remote access.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Doran Kim. I study textiles and apparel at the University of Texas. Fashion for me is a tool to express myself and to communicate with other people. My passion for fashion right now is in sustainability. I think sustainable fashion is not an option anymore, but essential. So my portfolio has 4 of my projects. Each of the project has 3 or 4 pages. So the first project is called the Replay. It is a sustainable fashion collection. I try to include my inspiration, images, drawings, and colors on the first page with the title. The second page, I put my final outcomes. And then I start to explain how I started to work on this project. So I got inspired by this stacked, discarded classified folders and upholstery swatch books at a thrift store I love to go to. I felt bad to see so many discarded materials, so I wanted to use them for my piece. As I described here, this collection is kind of to satirize all the waste people generate. For that, I overly made my garments shiny and colorful. So these are my first and second dresses. And then these are my third and last pieces. And the jacket from the last piece was sold to my professor, gratefully. And the next project is Metaverse, which I was inspired by. So this collection is for real and virtual life. After the 3D figures, I put my 2D flats. So the first item is long vest. If you close the vest, it becomes a dress. The next item, we have a hoodie and a pair of white pants. and then dress, and a top, white waist belt, and shorts. So Metaverse is virtual shared space, so it's like Fortnite or the app Zeppero for the people who are not familiar with it. It is a really growing market. The CEO of Netflix said that their biggest rival in the future will be Fortnite instead of Disney Plus or HBO. I put some of my 3D designs down at the bottom on the left. And this is my inspiration board for the collection. I included my pattern design and some fabrics. And with my call outs and front and back flats. The third project is called Siphonifera. That is this figure on the left. This is an art piece I found at a museum on campus. And that piece led me to this water pollution that the fashion industry generates, because this Siphonifera lives under the water. So yeah, I tried to be sustainable again. I used a dead stack fabric for the dress. And this is the outcome. This is the photo shoot of the dress, and this was featured in one of the singers who reside in Austin. So I wanted to include it here. And my last project is called the Design for Disassembly. This is the photo shoot. So the Design for Disassembly is a fairly new concept for sustainable fashion design. It uses fewer components, less material, and zero weight, zero trims. Trim meaning zippers or buttons or something like that, so that it can be disassembled after its end use and then reused for another cycle of usage. So this project was for my global sustainable fashion design internship in Copenhagen, Denmark. So this is the final pattern for the Design for Disassembly project. So with this pattern, the fashion company doesn't need to waste any fabric. So this pattern enables the zero waste manufacture, and it doesn't need any trims. And of course, it can be reassembled after its end use. I had the opportunity to present my work at the College of Copenhagen, I believe. So on this page, I try to explain that after this first piece of DFD garments, we can disassemble this piece and make the next design as shown here, and then another design as followed. And this page is just to show my skills with CAD. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doran. We'll kick it over to Becca.
Congratulations, Doran. This portfolio is super strong and amazing. So just want to give you a shout out for this. I feel like when I was first looking at your portfolio, the thing that struck me more than anything is that you really are passionate about sustainability. And that sustainability, that through line is so clear and evident in each iteration. So whether it's, using materials or reusing plastic files, to doing digital collections, to doing zero waste, there's so many different ways in which you can express your passion for sustainability. And it's really cool to see how versatile you are and how many different things that you have explored during your your time as a student. So that is really, really cool to see. So congratulations. Yeah, I one other thing I really loved about your portfolio is the way that each page is really full with color, texture, images, like backdrops. There's every page has like even the one where you had the siphonophora, like you had like the watercolor splotches in the backdrop. Like it definitely feels that each page of your portfolio is really highly considered, and you really took time to kind of create an experience with each page. It's not just informative. Well, I feel like the most informative page is the one you have on right now. But if you flip through, like, you know, there's just so much lushness and so much color, so much texture, and you can really feel like your love of like craft. And so that really struck me. There was a few things that I felt like I would have done differently if it was my portfolio, which is one thing is fonts, like graphic design fonts. You kind of switch between, each project has like different fonts, like the Metaverse project and the Design for a Disassembly has like a, oh gosh, I'm not even a graphic designer, so I don't even know the technical terms, but it's very like sans serif, straight and narrow kind of font. And then you use something like a Times New Roman for like replay and siphonophora. And I guess that I would have chosen one and gone with it through the whole thing to kind of just create a clear through line as to your work, the way that you and your design thinking is still there, but it's expressed in different ways. So I would keep the fonts in a more like let the work do the talking. Unless the fonts was like a crucial part of how you told the story, then disregard what I'm saying. But I felt that's one thing that I would have changed. One thing I would love to learn more about is the Metaverse collection, the print that you used. It was such a big part of the final garments, and I felt like in the BTS or mood board or the inspo, I guess I didn't understand where the print came from. Like, is it something that you, I guess I would like to know more. The print felt like such a crucial piece of the collection, so I wanted to know more about the inspiration behind the print. I guess I could keep going. I don't know if you want to respond, but one other thing I really loved was the first project that you showed, Replay. I love that you sold it to a professor, and I also loved like when you showed the garment that was used in the music video. It's really cool to see your work out in the world and being worn. I think that's really strong, and it kind of shows, I feel like, the first hints of you post school. Like, I feel like, I don't know, one of my questions for you would be like, what do you want to do? Do you want to have your own label? Are you more interested in like being a pattern maker and doing textile or doing textile design? Or like, there's so many different places you could go with this body of work. I guess I would love to know kind of like what was your favorite, where you would want to take it from here. So
I want to be fashion. I want to go into fashion design path. Like tech design is great, but my passion is more into design itself. So,
you said like technical design, like production and tech packs and stuff?
No, just like pure apparel design parts instead of the tech design.
That's cool. Yeah, in that case, if you do another project in the future, I feel like the more real bodies and real people you can show wearing the garments, that's sort of a step into that direction of like, you're making clothes for people to wear. And that's, that's sort of where you're going from here. I did want to say the Metaverse collection is really cool because as a fashion designer working in quarantine, I worked with a lot of people remotely. Oh, 2 minutes left. I worked with a lot of people remotely, and we used systems like Clo and other 3D draping systems during that time where we couldn't even be in the same room, making patterns together or draping together. And so this I definitely feel like it's the future, and to have these skills coming out of school is going to be really beneficial for you. So yeah, I mean, as far as your portfolio, you're so skilled, you're so technically, you have a lot of experience. So, I think you're going to get a great job when you graduate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. This is amazing. I was thinking some similar things and I saw some really wonderful feedback in the chat. I think I saw the ideas of using everything and not wasting materials is very beautiful to people. And I personally loved how you thought about the whole life cycle of a lot of these, like whether it was the life cycle of a material or the life cycle of a garment. That seems to like find its way into your work in a lot of really wonderful ways. So thank you so much. And Becca, thank you so much for your awesome feedback. So next up, we're going to speak to Nidhi Malpani. Nidhi is a high school student, also in Austin, Texas. And I am going to share my screen and Nidhi, I will give you access. Hello.
Hi, like Kristen said, I'm Nidhi. I'm currently a senior in high school in Austin, Texas. And yeah. So my first piece is an illustrated map. I created an illustrated map with like electronically hand-drawn icons about my carencia, which is basically the place I get my strength from in Spanish. Each location on the map is related to something that makes me me. Just to name a few items, the lighthouse is to represent my parents, the Ferris wheel is my sister, and the boats represent my close friends. And the butterflies show my adoration for butterflies. My next piece is a typography that I did using pickled beetroot. It was inspired by all the stains that I have spilled on my shirts and have ruined them. I was just my inspiration for this was obviously the stains, and I used beetroot and cut it up using a knife into letters and made stamps using them. My third piece is Eagle. This, I was in the Cooper Hewitt National High School Design Competition with 2 other high schoolers across the country, and we won first place. So this is called Eagle, which is basically an addiction recovery and self-care app. The next slide will play a video, which will go through the app, and it's a snippet from the competition.
Anna has been using Eagle for quite some time. She receives encouraging reminders from her roads whenever she opens the app. She customized it this way so that some of her friends wouldn't see a notification and question it, because she's not ready to ask for their support quite yet. She loved how much Eagle valued and ensured her privacy and comfort. Her plant is still happy from yesterday, and her butterflies make her smile. Look at that wonderful progress. She goes to fill out her log as she reflects on the day. The goal she set last night was accomplished. Her eating disorder made the progress slow and steps small, but they were steps nonetheless. Her meal, water, and sleep numbers made her realize just how tired she was. So she got out of bed and drank a glass of water. How did she forget to drink water all day? Maybe because she was so focused on not drinking alcohol. There, that's better. She decides to aim a little higher for tomorrow's goal. Anna then goes to the journal and fills out the prompts. The last question is her favorite. It's always so nice to focus on the positive. When she switches back to check on her roads, her heart aches a bit to see it wilt, no matter how slightly. She glances up to her desk just in time to see the change. Ah well, tomorrow would be better. When she turns back to the app, the simulated sun has set as well. She goes to her community to check on her fellow companions and is very happy to see her friend, Fabio Marcelli, doing better. It's wonderful when people that share your struggle do well, even when you're not. She considers checking in on her other community, but since it's been a good couple of days for that addiction, she moves on to check on the butterfly garden. This is her favorite part of the app, so she always congratulates a couple users before going to sleep. She's always excited to wake up to a "Congratulations" notification from another user. so she wants to gift that to others. The next day, she texts Ebony, a friend she called yesterday, and they decide to go on a walk together. She can't believe the progress she's made since starting AGLE. The daily reflections and encouragement keep her motivation high when she wants to fall back into her old habits of starvation and isolation. Calling a friend is more than she could have imagined weeks ago, and look at her now. On their walk, Anna decides to show Ebony her butterflies in the augmented reality camera. As they watch them settle on benches and branches, she suggests Ebony get the app as well for their caffeine addiction. It helped her, why not others?
Ebony agrees.
Something that I didn't mention earlier, basically the app runs on emphasis part of it. So the idea is that for some people, it's easier to take care of other things than it's to take care of yourself. So there's, along with the app can be paired alongside a physical mechanical plant that can be placed on your desk, and that's synced with the app. So basically, if you're not doing so well, if you had a bad day yesterday that you logged into the app, the flower will look a little drooped, which could be shown in the video when Anna, our fake person who was going through the app, wasn't doing so good. So the flower drooped, and thus the physical plant also drooped. Yeah, so this is just a quick wireframe, and this is the background work and our user journey and our drafting wireframes. My next three pieces are covers. They're book covers. A while back, I used to make book covers on an online ebook platform. So these are just three that I've made. The one on the left is one that I actually used my own personal photography and I edited it. And the last one is another book cover. This one was actually published by an author. She's a neurologist, and these are the book were just short stories that contain the cases that she sees on a daily basis. So this project spanned over multiple months and went through many iterations. And that's all.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, and congratulations. It's wonderful to have a national high school design competition winner in our midst tonight, and also you can find out more about the competition in the chat. My colleague Cecilia added more. So over to you, Tosh.
Yeah, congratulations on this. I think it's amazing that you're in high school and you do all this. I didn't even realize there was like design being taught in high school. So I'm absolutely surprised and think your work is wonderful. So let's just start with the map, the Querencia. Probably not pronouncing that correctly, but I love how it's just so expressive. Like it doesn't look like a personal piece. Like you would think a personal piece, it wouldn't have this quality. Like it there's a naive quality, and I mean that in the best intention. There's something naive about it, which is difficult to do. There's like the perspective is wrong, and it's like a Disneyland map, but in a really positive way. Like I think to do something simple and to really express like these places and lands and buildings, and you see the oceans, like it's just really fun, and the colors are just as fun. And it's a place like you want to go, like you want to explore more of this land, and you really wish it was a real place. So I mean, I think it's wonderful. So let's go to the next piece. I think this is like everyone's favorite. Like it's so like simple is really, really difficult to do. And what's great about this is the idea is just so straightforward. And in today's world where like digital is the first thing you go to, just to see someone in high school go the opposite way, go analog, and just it's really like the imperfections that make this beautiful, right? Like the way the beet juice is absorbed, it's not evenly absorbed throughout the whole font. And then the font itself has all these imperfections in it, but it's really expressive. Like that's the one thing you can't get, or that it's difficult to achieve in like the digital medium is it's so cold and sterile. Like just something like this is just wonderful to see. And then just even the color, like it's like to get that color is, like just even going from like sort of the dark area to the lighter area, just has tone and texture. I mean, it's just great. The one thing I would add is I would love to see an expansion of this. Like I want to see it apply to something. And, like maybe you do like I know you've done the book covers, but maybe it's like, I mean, this is the obvious thing to do, but a cover for a cooking book, like maybe this is the font on the cover, and maybe it's like, and maybe the font is the main design of the book jacket, right? So it's not like this font is over image, but it's like this font that is like sort of the hero design conceit of the whole book jacket. But I would definitely add something like that, because then it also you also get like your thought process. So it's not just sort of this one-off like beat, like cool font, but like let's just see how it's applied. And I think that's what's great about your work is you really see that there's a lot of thought process. So I think just by adding a book jacket to this, I think it'll just sort of complete your sort of thought exploration on this piece. All right, let's go to the next one. This piece, I'm surprised. Like this is, like 3-4 high school students who created this, because this is super ambitious. This has, like what it has, like UI, it has packaging, it has branding, it has some tech, social. It has just a ton of different disciplines. And each of them are difficult to master in and of itself, right? But you're trying to tackle it. Like you have no fear at this point. Like I guess that's what's great about being in high school. You just think you can do everything, which you should think that way, and you just attack it, which is fantastic. The one thing, and I think we talked about this before the first time we met, is there is the packaging component to this. And I think that's one thing I'm missing, is you talk about this physical flower, but you talk about it later in the presentation. Like I want to see it up front, right? Like it should have equal weight with this UI. So that's the one thing. I think it comes in too late. And that's another opportunity to design something, right? Design the package for this product itself. So if anything, I would definitely add that. But as far as like the thought process in this, like in design, there's always, the people who think conceptually, and those who actually can create and execute, right? And the best people are the ones who can do both. And I think you're kind of in that line where you can see the thought process, and you want to tackle these big issues. And also you're able to just looking at that map you created, you can express these ideas, and like these are really difficult conceptual ideas that can be difficult to express in a very simple, direct way. And I think that's the beauty of this, is you're able to do that. You're able to like cut through all of this stuff and just get to the point and really articulate what needs to be articulated. Is you're helping out someone with addiction, and what better way is to use empathy and have them help grow this plant. So I think just from a perspective of just tackling a problem, it's really smart. And again, I'm just surprised that you're able to think through all these things and you're still in high school. So the world is your oyster. But and to be honest, like I don't know how to judge a high school portfolio, because we usually look at college student portfolios. And the one thing that is different is the focus, which I think maybe you probably shouldn't have the focus when you're in high school. You just want to explore and just think of big ideas, think of the biggest possibilities. And then I think once you get into high school, or I mean, once you get into college, the thing that happens is you sort of find a lane, whether it's like, oh, I want to get into 3D, and then people just start focusing on that, or I want to be an illustrator, or I want to be in branding. And I think too many times people think that they have to choose a path, and they have to choose a singular discipline. And I think what makes your work, your design strong right now is like you you want to tap into the UI, you want to tap into illustration, you want to tap into typography. And those are, 3 disciplines that you can fully focus on and be an expert in each one of those, right? So I love sort of like your ambition and just thinking of like these huge ideas and just not being afraid to tackle them. All right, let's go to the next page. Yeah, or just the previous page. So like this page, I wouldn't, like if you're gonna show this page, I would make sure that it's a little bit more clear. Like I'm not sure what's happening here. I understand it's a wireframe, but like maybe you show sort of like the wide shot of this, but then you go into the details of what you're doing. So at this point, unless you were to like start focusing in on what each of these sketches mean, I would probably leave this out. Okay, let's go to the next one. And see, I just love how you're exploring the typography in this. It's like, I mean, just looking at the overall portfolio, just the way you choose your typefaces, it's interesting. Like I love that you made your own typography, and I love that you're customizing typefaces. I love that you're taking your own photos, because it's easy enough nowadays where people just go online and they find photography, and that's kind of easy to do, right? Like just find photography and then add some really cool font on top of it. But just the fact that you took time and you considered the lighting and like the material and every aspect of what goes into design, it's like you're really art directing your idea and really like sculpting the idea that's in your head. And then that's really hard to do, because a lot of times people do just find some cool image and start riffing off of that. And that's a really easy way to design, but to be able to start with an idea and take it through finish, I think that's super commendable. And then just even the simple thing as like that first, if you go back, just how you considered like using a lowercase on the aberration, and then the way you broke up the word, I think is a fabulous. And again, like it just shows the way you think and you consider like every little detail. And then just how in the crystal rose, like the rose is covering up the type. I think that's really nice. So I think those details matter. Obviously, I'm critiquing you with the lens that you're still in high school. If it was 4 years later, it would. I mean, I'd probably critique you a little differently, but I do love just sort of your broad range of ideas and style. All right, so let's go to the next one. I mean, this is fabulous. I love the color. Like this color is really great. It's simple. Get the idea right away. The one thing about this is I know just the fact that I've seen your sort of the way you created the beat type. I feel like you should consider the type just a little bit more. I feel like maybe there's something you could do that's equally expressive with the typeface, and that I guess that's my biggest critique with this is it's nice, it's good, the type is good, but and just because I saw that really beautiful type you created, I would just explore that a little bit more and consider the type in this, and maybe consider the scale of the type in relationship to the image also. So, because you want to create a little bit of tension, you know, and like that's the one thing that's not necessarily happening with this. And then was this the last piece?
Was, yes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think you know, this is again, the work is pretty amazing, especially for a high school student. And I just like to know, like what's your next step? Like, what do you, or like, which colleges are you applying for? Like, do you even know what subject you're interested in at this point, or do you just want to keep exploring all these different disciplines?
I'm interested in just exploring the disciplines. So far, I'm looking at communication design, but
So you're keeping your options open.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Nidhi, and thank you, Tosh, for that thorough review. We get that question all the time on our end at Cooper Hewitt, which is like, what's that balance between sharing that you're a well-rounded person, that you're a curious person, and then like the idea of like picking a discipline or a lane, and what's the balance? And I think what I've learned from today is that it depends on where you are. And there's so many lovely things about this portfolio. So congrats, Nidhi. And I also want to shout out that Nidhi also added a collaborative piece, and we don't get any work done in, like, I don't get any work done in my regular job without other people. And it's so important to show that you can work with others. So I just thought that was really cool. And there were some great comments in the chat if you want to look through. So with that, I'm so excited to hand it over to Edwin Flores. Edwin is a student at Design and Architecture Senior High School in Miami, Florida. So over to you, Edwin.
Hello, my name is Edwin. I go to Design Architecture Senior High in Miami, and I'm in the architecture program. Today, I wanted to showcase exactly what my design process looks like. And that really begins with art. And I feel it's important as a starting point for me to delve into art, because I get to explore the concepts that I'm interested in, which ultimately help inform my design work. The following examples are pieces that explore the idea of falling further and further from reality into an escapist fantasy. And here I try and practice creating environments that are reminiscent of the real world, but ultimately they are surreal manifestations of different emotions that I feel every day when I'm trying to avoid the real life. And I experiment with creating an atmosphere, both literally and as a mood that makes the viewer engage with the space I'm trying to represent. Here's an example of using bits and pieces of the natural world along with these fantastical elements, and I use them to describe the transition between reality and fantasy. And one thing is that this feeling of liminality, transition, or transport is at the heart of my design work and is something I always try to highlight. When I'm trying to design, I use a similar approach with art. I use it as inspiration, and here is an example where I ask specific questions and I use different art to try and visualize what the answers to those questions may be. So in this example, I'm designing a pavilion, and one of the questions I decided to focus on is, how can escapism be used to cope with stress? And being intrigued with that third question, I then focus it further and try and pick out design elements from other architects or from the natural world, or just anything I find inspiration from, and things that help inform my piece. In this case, etherealness or the otherworldly designs otherworldly designs help create a sense of escape from reality. And that's something that was really important for this project on how to avoid stress with escaping reality. And so going into concepts, I wanted to do several sketches of what this may look like. And all of these obviously show motifs from some of the previous artworks that I've done. And then I try and focus it further into something more resolved. In this case, I'm using a sort of net as a cage or a shelter for people to enter, sort of the separation between the real world and then going into this otherworldly space. And there I design what the inside may look like. And it's once again using these motifs that I had explored in my artwork. And the next step is coming up with a conceptual model. And this is a work in progress, but here it's to sort of get this idea of the space and trying to continue on from everything I've built on since the beginning. An example of a completed project, going from, once again, that entire process back to inspiration. I'm trying to come up with a seating area that helps evoke biophilia. And it's usually where two parties are in conflict, particularly family members that can be able to sit beside with one another in this space. And once again, this project is sort of a vehicle to be outside of reality and to be in this temporary world where two parties that are alienated can be able to reconcile. And that was the idea behind this project. That's a conceptual model, a completed one, of what this space may look like. Lastly, I wanted to show an example of a project I had worked with a classmate during the summer, which was to design a community space for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And I wanted to really use these ideas once again, because in public schools, these are often neglected spaces where people, particularly children, don't feel welcomed because of the lack. I feel the design in the space often lacks the details and often lacks that feeling of comfort. So that's something we particularly wanted to address. And we used the Everglades, which is close to this center in Homestead in Miami, Florida, the Everglades National Park. We used that as inspiration for all of the different designs in the project. And one thing I want to highlight in particular is designing the terrace area outside of the actual community center building. We wanted to obviously create a terrace area where people can not just be able to relax and unwind and the people working in the space or anybody who is there, but also to keep sustainability in mind. As you can see, the text says rainwater redirected from awnings into cisterns that are collected for irrigation. What that means is that we wanted to design awnings, which are these coverings, to redirect rainwater, which is very common in Miami, to then go ahead and use that rainwater that's collected into these cisterns and use it to water the plants outside. And right now I'll show you what that space looks like. And that is sort of something impactful for me because we were able to design a space for actual people and hopefully it will be built. And the idea behind it, once again, is something that I've been exploring throughout the entire design process.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Over to you, Doris.
Oh, great. Thank you, Edwin, for sharing. It's so nice to not only see your work, but also hear you talk about it. I think everybody probably knows when you're applying to school, typically you don't have the ability to explain your portfolio to anyone. And so there's a different criteria when applying to school than when presenting your work. But it's nice to hear your insight, because that also gives me the ability to give a little more feedback, I think. What I first want to just point out is the criteria that we often use when we look at portfolios for architecture schools. I don't know if everyone knows this, but architecture school for undergraduate professional degree is a 5-year program. And in that 5-year, we teach the students everything from beginning to end. You can walk in with very, very little architectural background, because we intend to teach you everything from digital skills all the way to technology and design, history, theory, etc. Oftentimes when we look at portfolios, we look for diversity. I think that Kirsten brought this up before. We look and we'll accept any kind of form of artwork or expression. So like what you're showing here, everything from painting to sketches are all acceptable, but we oftentimes see anything from photography. We see people submit things that are more creative. Recently, we accepted a student who submitted a dance video. Not only were they dancing, but I guess a la TikTok style, they edited the video in such a creative way that too gave us insight into the student and how they see things. Another criteria that we look for is the ability for students to understand things spatially and to possibly represent them or to express them spatially. So we're not just looking for 2D type of representations or flat type of artwork, but something that has depth to it. So like this perspective that you're showing is that there's obviously an understanding of volumes and spaces that we think in. We also look in the drawings for, and I know this is kind of odd, but for a capability for grit and hard work, which is part of like detail oriented, which I think you show a lot. If you go to your, the beginning with your paintings, we see that a lot in your paintings, because there's an amount of detail and you can see how painstaking it is to finish these drawings. And that hard work that it takes to get there, as opposed to, which is different, a sketch, right? Which in some people's cases could be turned out very quickly, is a little haphazard, is more conceptual versus something that's a very complete type of work. We look for basic graphic skills too, because we're looking for sensibility. If a person has that kind of sensibility and that graphic skill, and I think this image here is a good example, is how one might compose a drawing, painting, or image, even a photograph, right? It's a composition on a natural level. It doesn't, again, have to necessarily be taught. Graphics on how you use fonts and added notation, oftentimes from Photoshop or Illustrator, from other types of means, or even handwritten, and that kind of craft to it. I'll talk a little bit more in some of your images. We look for technique, right? If someone has some ability with the eye-hand coordination technique, and you show that quite a bit in your work, in your paintings, as well as in your hand sketches, because it's a very different way of thinking and training if it's 100% digital. And then finally, what I would suggest for you, because you have a storytelling quality about your work, is to title your images properly, not necessarily in text like in these paintings, but when you submit portfolios, I think at all architecture schools right now, you submit an image, and with that image, you can have a title. Sometimes it'll ask for the medium size of it, and then you have a small component that you can write the narration explanation. So that can be very, very useful for you, especially for these first images that are paintings. So with those, general criteria, one mentioned, I probably looked at about 600 portfolios last spring for admissions class at USC. You have a very, very strong portfolio, I'd say, first of all, Edwin. And if you go through your first 4 paintings, I think it's very smart and strategic, because as far as the quality of your artwork and presentation is probably some of the strongest work, right? So your control of the brush, the content, the composition, the colors, the technique, those things show that you have an ability to understand what refined work actually should look like, right? And as we move forward and fast forward through your first 4 images, I will say it is nice that you include 4 of those images, because the other thing that it explains to us is that one painting is not just an accidental or the only painting you produced. When you show 4 of these paintings, basically it's implying to me that these are 4 of possibly many paintings that you might have, right? And that you had to make a selection to do that, or that is not a one-off thing. So that actually is quite nice about your paintings. The next few sequence I think is actually quite nice too, because you show the process of design or the process that you went through from, from the beginning inspiration all the way to your actual design proposal. So I think that's actually quite nice too. The dilemma is because the graphics start to change so much, it's hard to know that without you explaining to us that these 4 images, I think it is, were all part of a package in a single project. So that was a little bit difficult to follow. And I don't know if there's something that you can do very simply graphically to tie these 4 images together. So for example, very simply, it could have been a specific, green color outline, right, at the edge of these things that show us that that is one sequential project. That would help because the quality of the images start to change. But it's only once I realized that these are 4 sequentials where I realized that the reason why they're changing is because the project is developing further and further along. So I think the sketches are great because they're very sketch-like, very different than your paintings. I think the added text on here makes it also adds to that text component. And then when you scroll forward, each one gets more and more refined, which is nice. And in these last ones, it's nice because you start to show your ability to draw in section, what we often do in architecture. In elevation, you show some planimetric views, which is nice too. Again, we don't expect anyone to actually do that because what you find in first year in architecture school is that is exactly what we teach you. So even if students don't present anything architectural in their portfolio, we will still accept anybody who even showed, even like the previous 2 portfolios that we saw, which could be fashion design or graphic design too. So because we intend and plan to train everyone architecturally afterward. But you have a little more of a background, so it's a little different. So if you keep going to the next image here. So this is, so the good thing about this image I really like, and I'll compare it to another model later down, is that you presented it very cleanly. The lighting is nice. The background is jet black, shadows, and high contrast is there. The dilemma is what this is not showing is a good level of craft, right? Craft meaning your edges aren't lining up very cleanly. It seems extremely sketch-like, and I'm not sure what if this is informing or adding to your previous sketches. So if I asked you, and this might be useful for everyone else, I asked Edwin to actually present 15 images because I thought it would be useful for everyone to understand how to also edit out pages or images that are unnecessary, right? That really aren't helping them. And so in Edwin's case, in this case, I know you built the model, it probably took a long time and is very, very difficult because of the shapes and stuff like that. And typically, I have to say, if we do this in architecture school, we use it with a lot of computation help because I don't know anyone who can actually do this by hand. So it's probably just not helping you to show this image. So you may want to eliminate this one. If you go forward to the next set of this, so the next set too, as I said before, is the one big piece of advice is to make it clean and sharp. The only criticism I'd have for this part is that it'd be nice if it wasn't so yellowed. So if you have the ability to use Photoshop or anything like that to just make it a higher contrast so it's not a yellowed out drawing. And then if you keep going forward to the next 2, I know we don't have a lot of time here, I assume that the perimeter stuff is supposed to be plants and trees. Is that correct, Edwin?
It's supposed to be based off of plants and trees, but
Plants
it
and
would be
trees, right?
made.
Which I think is really smart to do in a model form because it's really hard to build plants and trees. But you will find when you get to architecture school, you don't want to draw your model. So in your previous drawing, where you actually draw the plants and trees very similarly, what we want to do is because drawings are more aspirational, you know what I mean, you could have included real plants and real trees, or better, you know what I mean, drawing, you know what I mean, you could have drawn the trees and plants a little better here and not draw your model, because what you're trying to show us what the final project is supposed to be about, you're not doing drawings of your model. That's just a small thing. And then finally, I think your last project, and I'll go through this real quickly. I think this project actually probably would have been better off in your essay and for you to talk about it as an experience than actually show the drawings, because as a graphic and, you know, for architecture school, it's not necessarily helping us. It's not showing, you know what I mean, these, you mean your innovative ideas, you know what I mean, it's basically showing us an architectural project that is what we were, you know what I mean, what we will teach you in school, you know what I mean, at a much more advanced level. So these last projects, it's up to you really if you want to include it. If anything, I would maybe only include this page and eliminate all the images afterward. Because again, we'll teach you how to do perspectives. The technology of the rain, you know, drainage is, you know, at a much more advanced level. We will cover all that kind of stuff. And so it's almost a little too elementary probably to put in here as one of your 10 pages that you want to submit. So I think overall it's a fantastic portfolio, Edwin. I know that it may, I don't mean to critique it, you know, I mean, in any, you know, I mean, mean way, but in a very, very clear way for you to be able to then walk away and have some clear understanding of how to improve your portfolio. But I will say again, for everyone else out there, Edwin does have a really nice architectural background before entering. Not, you know, in architecture school, I think the majority of our students who apply or applicants do not have any architectural background, and we don't require it whatsoever in our portfolio reviews.
That's good to know. Thank you so much, Doris, and thank you so much, Edwin. You spilled the secrets, I feel like, Doris, which was very helpful. And I'm seeing in the chat, Edwin, you know, someone just wanted to state how well you explained all of your concepts and how they can tell that you're really impacted and connected by your work. And I would agree, I think you're a great storyteller, and I loved seeing that story come to life. So thank you both so much. So we're gonna scoot over to Katarina King, who is at North Carolina State College of Design in Durham, North Carolina, and is in school for landscape architecture. And her reviewer will be Mia Lair, who will introduce herself.
Hello, I met Katarina last week. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. I was actually in Dallas on a site project and ended up having a little time, so thank you. I'm a landscape architect in Los Angeles, and we're excited to see the next generation of people going into landscape architecture. And of course, I believe one of the jury members for Cooper Hewitt this year was none other than Kofi Conan, that is with North Carolina State. And I personally studied environmental design at Tufts University, not knowing that I thought it was either architecture or planning that you could study. I didn't know that other professions existed. So I was very pleased to find out that landscape architecture was a sort of a line of study and a profession by just seeing drawings up on a wall, beautiful, beautiful 8-foot long drawings for the competition for Central Park that was won by Frederick Law Olmsted. And so I recently visited those drawings, and they are still beautiful. And so that's how I got into the profession. And I ended up doing 3.5 years at Harvard. So I'm from Central America, from El Salvador, and I moved to California 38 years ago. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and review.
Thank you, Mia. And hi, everyone. My name is Katerina King. I'm currently in my 3rd and final year of the Master of Landscape Architecture program at NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. I wanted to start by introducing a little bit about my background, as well as the core design goals that carry through all of my projects. I have a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the University of Colorado, and I included this map of my personal geography to illustrate all the parts of the country that I've lived in for an extended period of time. Living in these different regions has had a major influence in the way that I think about space and the qualities that give a place its unique character, particularly through the influence of climate and water. And when I discovered the profession of landscape architecture, I was drawn to the fact that it really marries a lot of my interests, such as art, geography, architecture, and natural systems. And so while each site has its own set of considerations, the diagram on the right illustrates some of the core concepts that influence each of my designs, including how well it functions as an ecological system, how it contributes habitat and supports local biodiversity, and of course, how it serves and benefits the community. And so I'll be sharing 2 projects today. The first is in an urban context at the Marbles Kids Museum in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. The goal of this project was to redesign the existing courtyard to improve its ecological function, while also serving as a creative space for museum patrons and the surrounding downtown community. And so this is my proposed master plan. This design centers around a central planting concept with various spaces to gather or play. And returning to those core design goals, these are some of the components that support biodiversity, ecology, and community benefit, such as natural learning environments and native plant communities. And so this is a closer look at the planting concept and how it functions as green stormwater infrastructure for the space, with water making its way to the lowest bioretention cell. As part of an initial analysis, I conducted solar studies that helped to inform an understanding of site microclimates, as well as which plant communities might thrive. And because the project was completed as part of a design development and construction documentation studio, I created a set of construction documents. So these are just some excerpts of some of those details, including a materials plan, isometric views, and sections. So the second project I'm sharing jumps scales to a more rural context. This studio worked with community partners in Lenoir County in the coastal plain of North Carolina. Lenoir County is located along the Neuse River, and as such, it has faced the continued challenge of flooding due to upstream development and extreme storm events. Some efforts have been made to mitigate the impacts of flooding through a FEMA-funded buyout program that has helped to move people out of the floodplain. But the challenge now is that the county is in ownership of an excess of vacant land and no real management strategy. In addition, the county is also bracing for a planned future highway bypass project, which is expected to route travelers away from its economic center. So for my project, I considered ways to address both of these challenges. I started by conducting a watershed scale analysis, which looked at things like historic and current land cover impacts, and that identified priority native plant communities to help inform potential restoration areas. I then narrowed my scope to an area that includes a number of vacant and fragmented buyout parcels. What I ended up discovering is that the planned bypass route could actually serve as an opportunity to connect these parcels into a continuous stretch of open space. So once I made those connections, I looked at ways in which the historic wetlands and tributary channel could be restored to a healthier state. So this is the final site concept plan, which proposes a 177-acre wetland park with various opportunities for recreation. One of the main connecting features is a proposed new bicycle and pedestrian greenway trail that would run through the park and tie into the county's larger transportation plan. So the intention with the programming is to support a variety of users, including school groups that may be on a field trip, travelers who may be on the way to and from the coast, and of course the surrounding county residents. So this perspective illustrates what a restored floodplain wetland might look like and how it may be experienced through boardwalks and a greenway. This perspective illustrates the new greenway trail alongside restored wetlands, gathering and picnic areas, and interpretive signage. And this aerial view shows an area of the park that can support educational programming through a new wetland education center, outdoor classrooms, and areas for community agriculture. And finally, I wanted to include this slide to show how the project doesn't just end with the design proposal. Rather, it seeks to align itself with potential funding opportunities and partnerships to give the county stakeholders the tools that may be needed to consider project phasing and implementation. And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today and turn it back over to Mia. Thank you.
Good. So you want to start from the beginning? So do you want to go back to the beginning project? And so we could go, I really do appreciate that when you went from did a scalar strategy, if that term exists. And I think what I would say is that the drawings are very, very nicely done. They read well. I think they're labeled. One of my pet peeves is scale. So I'm glad you have a north arrow, but north arrow and scale, I can go crazy about in my office. Even today, I had such a situation. I think, can you go to the next one here? Yeah. I do think that is there a drawing before this? Slide before this, yeah. I think that you're, basically, the roots of your projects, having this biodiversity, community, and ecology at the heart, I think is really a good way to proceed and process the whole effort of a design and planning and eventual implementation. I think it may that there's something obviously. I'm just wondering. Can you go to the next one? And again, I like how you've used some of the images. I think some of this, the graphics are extremely controlled, and they're really nice. But it's kind of hard to see, even unless you're projecting. But most of us are seeing things on, and I have a pretty big Apple. A screen here, just larger is better, I think, even in terms of what's the, what is bee-balm and, what's that all going to feel like, or instead of, perhaps as a graphic to actually start putting some of the images, having the images of the plant material interface, interconnect with each other. So you can almost imagine the section because it's clear that you obviously chose the right plant material, but you know, visually, if you're a juror in a class or you're, you know, for a job interview, just, you know, to get a sense what this is like, what this wet meadow is going to feel like. If someone is not that familiar with all our graphic styles, and you could be interviewing at a firm, only at private firms, but if you were to be interested in, let's say, working in the public sector, or you know, like in an agency or in a nonprofit, and I think you know, these circles are hard to understand, so you have to be thinking about who's going to be looking at the project sheets that you know, what's the goal at that point. And for me, this is fine, but you know, I actually want to encourage people also to look at, you know, opportunities in the public sector or in nonprofits, because we all need good clients, and we need to pepper the world with our knowledge and our skills as landscape architects, because we're in such a, you know, what we do is so critical given sort of climate change. So I like the summer solstice and the winter solstice. I think it's a little light graphically, a little darker would be better. So can we go to the next one? I really like this sheet because it's, you know, very tangible. You know, one gets a sense that you know how things come together, and that you're interested in that aspect of the profession, which is, you know, basically making two dimensions become three dimensions in a reality. So I think that's what you've done here is really nice. It helps when you know, start as a young person in a job, whether again private or public sector. Once you have something like this, you could start talking both to the civil or structural engineer, but also to the cost estimator. You start thinking that way, right? Oh, you know, am I on budget, or what's my budget, and have, you know, and so start understanding that piece of the work. Next. And one thing that I think is would be interesting to see, and maybe you have it somewhere, is drainage in a project like the urban scale, that second project. You know, you could have a sheet where you have drainage, hardscape, planting, and softscape identified in, you know, three different sort of tones of gray, so you get a sense. Well, the drainage is obviously with arrows. You know, what is your plan? How are you going to get the water into those waters? You know, green water systems that you want to sort of make visible. And so I think these maps are really nice. The darker one reads reads easier than the lighter one. And I do have a very bright Southern California sun hitting me right now, but again, the text is the text on the legend is hard to read. Maybe you can make it, can we make it bigger here? But I just, all I'm saying is that when you're sharing these, you always have to be thinking of that sometimes people, it could be that you'd be talking to somebody who's in some truck in in Africa who you're thinking of working for, and they have a small screen, right? So the darker map reads really well. I like very much this idea of these sort of the plant communities as you're thinking of them, the swamps and the peatland. And I mean, I think that's really nice. Again, you're very disciplined about in control your scale. So I would urge you to go bigger on some of the in this particular map. If you could see the swamps and the hardwoods and just a little bigger, I think it would help to understand better what this country looks like. And as a matter of fact, I would have maybe included an aerial or a map of some kind of an aerial photo of the site before you enhanced it, just so we get a sense of what does a place feel like, and maybe doing it in a slight axon so you get a sense of the place. Really interesting to see that, the agriculture and all the aspects of how the site is used. And I mean, is, what it is now. When I was at the GSD, we had classes with Ian McCarg and Jack Dangermond, and then a couple people from the South who were the first to do really nice aerial photography work. So I think that, the process that you go through to get here is something you could share, right? A nice aerial, a nice accent. Okay, next.
And we're going to move to Q&A in about a minute, if that's okay with you all.
Yeah. And then, it's, I think this is really helpful. Again, scale is always a nice thing to have, like what's an acre or what's 1,000 feet on all of your plans. Just, it'll help you get sense of scale, and it helps everybody else. If you're a client, you want to know the scale. Next. This deserved a lot more attention, but I got going on other sites. But I imagine that you actually thought very carefully, just by virtue of the drawings, how well thought through they are. As you placed your program based on basically topography and also water and water movement, and how you wanted to program the site. And I think it reads really nice. It's a little, the black is it's a little hard to get used to, but I like it a lot. And you do have a scale there. So I'm pleased for that. So a nice park. Maybe one day we'll all go see it, huh?
I hope so. Thank you both so much.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mia.
We really saw a gamut of people in different, just an array of design journeys today. So I really appreciate ending on that one. Someone who's, a little further along and in graduate school. So it's really amazing to see, and something that I sometimes think we don't see a whole lot of, which is landscape architecture. So I really appreciate it.
Yes.
So I wanted to open it up to folks, and it seems like other people sort of have begun. What questions do we have about building a portfolio now that we've seen 4 amazing portfolios? And I noticed a question in the chat and in the Q&A box, which was from Wilson, which was about your website versus your portfolio. And that kind of got me thinking, we're all here in this kind of virtual space. And like, how has digital changed the game when it comes to portfolio building? Doris, I know your first portfolio was in a record box, right? And you know, what's the biggest difference in terms of how we build a portfolio virtually, and what things should we keep in mind if we're building a virtual portfolio? I'll pass it over to Doris since you're here.
Yeah, well, there's, you know, I think that's a tough question because the format is dependent on the receiver, I guess. So in terms of getting a job in architecture, for example, in offices, website is actually a good format, and people can actually move through it. In other cases, it is a PDF that you can actually share, which I think in those cases is more like work sampling. And it's oftentimes easier if you're emailing people that they can just refer to the PDF as opposed to go to a link and navigate, which is one more step. And I think it deters people from looking at it. In terms of applying to school for both undergraduate and graduate school in architecture, it's usually individual image uploads. So it could be an individual video, or it could be an individual, I believe, probably like a JPEG. And so in those cases, you have to have all the images, right? Sort of like Edwin showed, you know, like about approximately 10, 12 images that you can upload. So it's a different, depending on the deliverable and who your audience is of that format. I think Kirsten was talking about in the olden days when we were young, we didn't have the digital medium. So we actually had to build and make our own portfolios all the way down to the cover, and how you present it and how you change the page and things like that is different now. In other cases too, I've seen also students are very clever, and they make these apps, right? So that you can actually see, use on a phone, and they make these like magazine apps for the phone and other methods too. So I'd say for most students too, don't be afraid of being clever or resourceful or creative with that that portion too, because that also is very inexpensive. Can I just add one more thing too, which I think was really important? You know, we don't expect people to have or spend a lot of money on their portfolios. The great thing, because they're digital now, we're just, you know, we look for even, you know, people who can hand sketch, who can, you know, paint murals, who can do all kinds of things that don't require a lot of money and funding. And so don't feel compelled that you have to spend a lot of money on your portfolio. We're looking for people who put time and thought into it. So that I think is really critical.
That's really.
I would say another sort of something else I discovered is that it's really important for people to be able to write. So if you can, and Katerina expresses herself so beautifully, to be able to write a paragraph or a letter to pitch your project is it's very useful. You know, we've had people who don't know how to write letters. So if you want to, you know, even though when you first arrive in a firm, you might not be responsible for interfacing with the client, you still want people who can express themselves at every level. And so I think that's important. And I think the idea of just having hand sketches, unless you really are the type who's going straight into, you know, the digital design, you know, tools, if a lot of people are still doing a quick idea or a quick set of sketches that help them you know, lead them to the next level. So I don't think it's unreasonable to have some sketches.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, I think we all saw that when we saw Nidhi's beat type, you know, like that, just that hand quality of something can feel really important. And it's important not to forget about that, even though it's easy to, I think. Yes. Here's another one that's really great. And I think this one could be for Becca or Tosh. I think it's so beneficial to practice sharing a portfolio with a friend or a mentor. How would you recommend doing this, especially asking for advice for maybe someone you admire but don't know yet? Like, Is it a cold email? You know, do you email hello@company? What could that look like?
The question is, say, what was the question? Oh, who do you, if you want someone to give you a critique, you're saying?
Yeah, how would you recommend asking for advice, maybe from a friend or a potential mentor?
I think, I think mentors are absolutely important to have, and everyone should seek mentors out. I feel like, you know, at our studio, we have a mentoring program where we align like more senior level people with some of the junior level people. I mean, I guess that's the different answer to your question, but I would just say like you should reach out. Like you'd be surprised how much time people are willing to give to people that's just starting out. You know, like obviously, you know, even with this, it's like with Needy, I would love to like keep in touch with her and then help her along through her college career, and then like when she graduates. So just keeping in touch with the people that you come across, and just once in a while saying hello, I think is very important, because you never know, like you might not end up in the same field as I am, but everyone knows each other. I know a ton of people in sort of different fields, but still sort of connected to mine. And it seems like, especially in LA, a lot of people know each other, right? But don't be afraid to reach out. You should just try. And you know, all you're gonna get is a no at worst, right?
Yeah, really get used to that.
I would say also, it's hard for me to say that I would actually, you know, if you sent an email to info@studiomla, can you let it'd be really hard to think how you would get to that place. But I think at a lot of the conferences, whether it's AIA, ULI, ASLA, there's usually a, you know, or a lot of the universities have also peer reviews or just reviews of portfolio reviews. And it's really nice. I always stop by those, and I always volunteer during SLA for 2 or 3 hours, you know, 2 of the days, just to, you know, give people advice.
And can you tell us what ASLA stands for, just for the folks at home?
I'm sorry. American Society of Landscape Architects.
Fabulous. That's awesome.
And the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects is really strong also.
Fantastic.
And the Urban Land Institute, and then there's the Landscape Architecture Foundation, who also, if you were to go this year, it's in Nashville, I think. I of course want to go to the Voice while I'm there, but no, it's to the competition, the music competition, singers. I actually, by the way, I also I actually think that we really like to watch The Voice, and I always find it very wonderful how and would want to think of a way that we could do it in the design community, where you get a group of people and people present, and then there's this really beautiful conversation with advice, you know. So it's not just advice to you, but you're listening to the advice that other people are giving to the people you're competing with, and it's just fantastic as an experience.
Love that idea.
Yeah, it's so yeah, the American Society of Landscape Architects does at every conference we have one of those, you know, basically half day, every day of the conference there is a student basically portfolio review.
Great. And Becca, does that kind of hold in your world as well? Are there opportunities to kind of reach out to folks or put your work in front of people?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question because I get emails all the time from students or people. And to be honest, when it's just a cold call email, it's honestly kind of hard to respond to everyone and like DMs and stuff. So I was thinking, when y'all were talking, meeting someone in person, whether it's coming to, like, in my instance, like coming to a pop-up shop event, or just some kind of physical, like you see my face, I see your face, we chat, and then you email me, then I like, oh yeah, that's that person who was talking about sustainability, let me like follow up. it just helps like kind of cut through the anonymous email. So I think in person, like showing face is a really great way to meet people that you are inspired by and you seek advice from and stuff.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. I know that we've been together a little longer than we anticipated, and I wanted to thank, Edwin, Nidhi, Doran, Katerina, and all of our amazing reviewers for all their work, and also for all of you. The chat tonight was so valuable, and we'll share that with you all if you shared your portfolio today. We hope to be able to do a lot more of these, and please be in touch with us and our team, and we'll keep conversation going. So thanks for spending your Tuesday night with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We have a design career portfolio toolkit that we're linking in the chat to anybody who might like to learn a little bit more. Cecilia just put that in. So we hope that you'll enjoy that too as an additional resource. But thanks all. Have a great night.